Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets, a family podcast of pirates and penguins. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli. Speaking of penguins,
I was just about to say this.
Yes.
You totally jumped on that. Yes. Is it today or yesterday was World Penguin Day?
According to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, today was World Penguin Day. They posted a picture that said Happy World Penguin Day, and they posted the set of the best tea service I've ever seen. This tea service looks like penguins. There's a teapot, a creamer, and a sugar bowl, and all 3 of them are shaped like penguins.
Okay, I'm going to have to link to that. So,
oh my gosh.
Yes.
You have to use it as like the cover art for the episode because it is like the best.
If it's not copyright.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a Museum of Fine Arts.
Yeah. So we'll send me the link. I'll look into it. We'll see if one way or another we'll let folks see it because it is very cute. I would love to get a set of that tea service for us.
I wonder if they will ever consider doing a reproduction of it.
They sometimes sell reproduction stuff in their store, usually very expensive reproductions.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's been going on. This has been a broken week of broken things. So last week I mentioned Ben's brand new bike that we got him broke. And so I had contacted the company. The brand is Mongoose. Mongoose is a brand that's part of some multinational conglomerate, like 3 levels down. It's a division of a division of a division of something. Anyway, they FedExed it, which is nice.
FedExed the part.
Yes.
Not a new bike.
No. But when I got the part, I realized I need a special tool to replace this thing. Like I'm looking at it and I have to, Google a YouTube video, and it's just so very frustrating that this brand new bike broke. He didn't abuse it. He had a subpar part that bolt that sheared right off, a cheap bolt. And I have to jump through hoops so that this poor kid can ride his bike that he was so excited to have. And is devastated that he can't ride, and it's really frustrating. So I ordered the crank puller, so it's a special kind of wrench for taking the crank off. And
it seems to me that if you have to go through that much trouble, they should have just done a recall and reimbursed us for a new bike.
I sent them a strongly worded email, which I'm sure is now occupying the bit bucket on some customer service rep's computer, but we'll see how far that gets us. Anyway, so I hope to get to that this week and get it fixed. That's the other thing is just, the time it takes to fix these things. It's precious time. Well, speaking of broken things, so the dishwasher was seemingly broken the other day, was throwing up an error code. And when I looked it up, it was like, oh, it means there's water draining into the bottom and something's broken. I'm like, oh, I have to call a repairman. But then I noticed the water backing up into the kitchen sink, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a clog in the drain that's backing up into the dishwasher. So I called the plumber, who referred me to a drain specialist who came right out, which was nice. And $180 later, he cleaned the drain, and the dishwasher was working until you just told me it's doing it again.
It's not working anymore.
So now I've got to call the appliance repairman who's got to come out, and that's $100 just for him to walk in the door. It's so
joys of home ownership.
No kidding. It's just like one thing after another. Dishwashers, we have the worst luck with dishwashers. I mean, I know we use the dishwasher a lot. We twice a day at least we run it with dishes because 7 people and all the stuff. We're here all the time. All our meals are in this house, so it's just so frustrating. I mean, we basically broke the last one with it ingested a piece of tape that was on a container. and it got sucked into it, and it ate it up and destroyed the machine. I don't know what this is, so I'm afraid of like the guy coming in spending $100 to have him tell me it's broken and you have to buy a new one, which we're now 2 months after the warranty expired. That's the nice part. Anyway, so there's that. Frustration. So the other thing, I have no good news on that. I was going to be like triumphantly like, but it was just a clogged drain, yay! And then you told me that, so that totally sucked the air out of my triumph.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
So the other thing is this weekend was more camping with the scouts. This time it was just Ben's scout troop. The girls didn't go along on this one. And the nice thing was it was at a Camp Sayre, which is a scout camp that's literally 15 minutes from the house. So the last one we went to was an hour, and other ones could be even further, but this was literally 15 minutes. We could have gone on Friday night, but Ben didn't want to do 2 nights. He only wanted to camp for 1 night, and he wants me to be there for him for now, which is fine. He's still getting used to the idea and of staying overnight. So what I did was we drove up over there on Saturday morning. We set up the tent. I dropped him off, and then I came home to get things done. I had a bunch of stuff I had to do, including trying to fix his bike, and he had a blast. So at this particular camp, there's all kinds of activities. They have like an axe yard where you can learn about using wood tools like axes. They have a BB gun range. They have an archery range. They have an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They have all this stuff. They had a ropes course. And so my guess, my understanding is he had a blast. He said his favorite thing was the BB guns, which is no surprise. No, his favorite thing is the archery, but he was pretty good with the BB guns. But that's the archery thing is no surprise to me. So it was good. And so then I went back around dinner time and hung out with them, and we slept overnight. I slept this time. So last time I slept in a cot in the big tent with the girls, or no, with Ben. Actually, it was with Ben. This time we brought the smaller tent because I didn't want to haul the big tent up, and I slept in the hammock, which was my first overnight hammock sleep.
How did that go?
It wasn't great. Let me just put it that way. It was better than last time because it wasn't 19 degrees out. It was actually pretty warm. I was actually overheating even a little bit at a few points. So I probably didn't sleep for longer than an hour at a time. There were a few times where I'm like, lifting up my watch and tapping it because it's in night mode. It's like, what time is it? It's only a half hour later, and that sort of thing. But the big problem is you have trained me to be a stomach sleeper.
That's because you snore. Because
of the snoring. I know. I can't get you to stomach sleep because of the snoring. But you can't stomach sleep in a hammock.
No.
It's like being in a reverse banana or whatever it is. Like, it'd bend that way. So I kept trying to like roll on my side or whatever. It just wasn't working. So, but eventually I got up at like 2:00 in the morning. I hiked the bathrooms are like a half a mile away downhill. So it's like through the dark, went down, came back, got back into the hammock, and I managed to get a little better night's sleep for the rest of the way. But I was up by 5:30. The problem was we had some rain coming in. We knew that rain was coming. It would be here by 9. And so we were like, we got to get up. We got to get packed up and get going. We literally were walking down the hill to the cars when the rain started, when the first drips of rain were really coming down. So we really got out of there just in time. But so one of the things that they did while I was there was they made their plans for the next year. So they had this planning thing. Like, what do you guys want to do? And so there's a lot of interesting things that they talked about. They're planning like a big canoe trip, like an overnight canoe trip where they would like go out on a lake and camp in 3 different places.
Wow.
3 different campsites. I'm a little concerned about that because what happens when the canoe tips? What happens to their gear? Because a canoe is going to tip over. That's just...
Well, you should pack the gear so that when it tips, it doesn't get wet. So you're going to have to put everything in waterproof bags.
Yeah, so you need some dry bags. That's definitely... but you're gonna have to also make sure that the dry bags either float or are attached to the canoe, because they'll otherwise they'll go right to the bottom, and dry bag or no, they're gone. So I'm a little concerned with that. Also, Ben is not the strongest swimmer, so I mentioned they had the swimming thing, and they had a swimming test, and they rated them. And what I was told was this lifeguard who was doing the rating was pretty stringent, but the rating goes from non-swimmer up to expert swimmer, and they rated Ben as a non-swimmer, like he couldn't complete the basic requirements. So
he was kind of bummed about that.
Yeah, we need to work on that with him.
He's had very little practice swimming there. Like, we don't have access to a pool very often, so I think that's mostly just about opportunity, not
right. I mean, there's my brother John's pool,
which is like 45 minutes away.
Not 45 minutes, but it's a half hour away. Right, we have to make a journey over there to use it, and it's not very. We don't get to do that very often in the summer, right? So there isn't a lot of opportunity, and yeah, there are public pools. You can pay $20 at a time to go, but 5 kids, that's $100 every time you want to go to the pool. It's hard. So I don't know. Like I keep the other parents are like, well, there are lessons and all this. Like, yeah, that's all like. That's $35 for the kid to take one lesson. That's like $35 a lesson. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. So if he's a non-swimmer with a canoe trip, he can only be cargo. Basically, he has to sit in the middle and not paddle, which I'm not sure why. Like what is the difference at that point? You're still in a canoe. If the canoe goes over, you're still in the water, like whether you're paddling or not. I don't understand the difference.
The paddler is more likely to go in?
No, I mean if a canoe tips, everybody's in. There's no like one person falling over in a canoe. I don't understand the difference, but that's just one of the rules apparently. So he might have to miss out on something like that unless we can get him up to speed. Because they're also talking about other like short like day canoeing and that sort of stuff. But unless we can get him up to speed on that, that's not going to happen. I feel bad for that. So, and then there's like Adam's like, he's one of the assistant scoutmaster. He's like, so I get this idea. We're going to do some backcountry hiking. We're going to hike into the woods to primitive campsite where there's no facilities or anything. We'll camp there. And I'm like, these kids do not realize what you're saying. Like, no facilities. Like, no facilities. Like, these are the kids who are hiking half a mile down the hill to go use a power heated flush bathroom instead of the outhouse, which is like right around the corner. So yeah, that's they're gonna have to prep them for that. What's interesting is the troop is basically very young. All these kids are like just starting. All the older kids have graduated out, aged out, and so you have a bunch of young kids, and then you get 8 more coming in next year with all the kids in Anthony's Den. So it's a very young group. So it'll be interesting to see them try to adapt to that. So yeah, that was then we came home and we got home in time to go to mass, but Ben was too wiped out to.
He could barely stand up.
Yeah, and honestly, so was I. I mean, I could have made it to mass, but you guys went and we watched we still get the dispensation, so. But we watched the TV mass, and I remember some of that. I was fading in and out on that one. Ben's like, "Dad, it's time for the spiritual communion." Oh, okay. So just being honest here, I was having a tough time staying awake. So yeah, that's been our week. I think that's about it for things.
Yeah, my week has been really.
I mean, there's been a lot going on, but nothing really notable.
Yeah.
So
took the big girls for their annual physical. That was exciting.
Yes, the teenage girls physical. Yeah.
And
yeah,
we had some nice days. Went on some short walks in the neighborhood.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
One of the things we were doing is trying to plan a vacation. You're with your parents, trying to get a place, go when can we go, where can we go, how does it work with different schedules. It's a lot of work there, and yeah, it's looking actually like next September maybe. We'll see. And actually the later is probably better because things are going to open up and be more like you'll be able to go out to places and that sort of thing. So, that's probably a better anyway. But we'll get to that eventually.
We hope. Maybe.
We hope. All right, let's talk about food and stuff we've been cooking. So earlier this week, you made an impromptu soup.
Yeah, it was kind of a Moroccan chickpea inspired soup. You had bought carrots.
Mm-hmm.
Did we talk about the carrot cake muffins last week?
I don't know if we did. I don't think we did.
Okay, so I had a craving for carrot cake, and you bought a 5-pound bag of carrots, which I was very grateful for, but it's a lot of carrots.
You said, no, you said, don't skimp, get a big bag of carrots.
Right, because I didn't want you to get like a small bag of carrots, like a 1-pound bag of carrots, and I used the entire bag for the carrot cake muffins, and then we have nothing left for like other things that we might need carrots.
Yeah, so I got a 5-pound bag.
So you get the 5-pound bag of carrots, which sometimes there's nothing in between, like a 1-pound or a 5-pound.
I mean, yeah, I could have bought 2 1-pound bags, I suppose.
Yeah. Anyway, so the carrot cake muffins used a lot of carrots. It used 4 big carrots. It was 2 cups, tightly packed cups of finely grated carrot. And they were awesome. Oh my gosh, the carrot cake muffins.
I actually haven't had a chance to have one.
They're gone.
Yeah, I know.
They had pecans in them. I had currants in them, which I had soaked in bourbon. And they were so good. I'll have to make some more because I love carrot cake. And it turns out that Anthony and Sophie and Ben all loved the carrot cake muffins. Bella liked them. Lucy was not impressed.
Lucy is not impressed by a lot of muffin things. Oh. It's hard to please her with muffins.
Yeah, probably because she's had to eat them for so long.
Because of the only thing she could eat, yeah.
Anyway, so then we had a whole bag of carrots left over, and I'm thinking, what else can I cook with carrots? And I was thinking like a really carrot heavy soup with like ginger and chickpeas, and that got me thinking of this Moroccan soup that I've made different variations of. So this was a lot of carrots, again, like 4 big carrots in the soup, but it also had tomatoes and potatoes and chickpeas and onions and garlic and celery.
And coconut milk.
Yeah, coconut milk. And then we served it with crema. And it had like a
Mexican crema, which is like a Mexican sour cream.
Right. The spice blend was very sort of Middle Eastern. It had coriander and ginger and turmeric and I think some cinnamon and allspice. Like it was a very warm spice mix.
Uh-huh.
The one misstep I made with the soup is that we had some leftover grilled eggplant.
We've talked about the grilled eggplant we do.
But this batch of grilled eggplant, it tasted overly smoky, and I'm not sure what happened with it. Like it got smokier as time went on or something. Anyway, I was thinking, well, eggplant kind of goes along with the flavor profile of the soup. But when I dumped it in and then tasted it, I was like, oh, wait, that smells really smoky and it's kind of overpowering. After it had simmered a while, it stopped being quite so overpowering, and then adding the coconut milk and everything, and it sort of helped. But I think the soup would have been better without the eggplant.
It was pretty good as it was. I mean, I liked it. I think Lucy had a bunch of it. So yeah, it was good. And the leftovers were really good too. They reheating them. They had a spice to it, like you mentioned, like a warm spice mix, and I liked that in the soup. It gave it some depth.
A carrot soup should have a lot of ginger and garlic and like the warm like pumpkin pie, apple pie sorts of spices.
Which sounds weird, but it's like because you're talking about dessert spices, but those spices can also really go well in savory things.
Right.
Yeah. So,
which was kind of funny because they were the same spices I did use in the carrot cake muffins: ginger, allspice, cinnamon, nutmeg.
Well, what's funny is so the dish I made tonight also had some of those same spices. Mm-hmm. So I was making a dish I'd made before, which is a spiced shrimp and tomatoes with fresh mint recipe.
Except we didn't have fresh mint.
Yeah, it originates in Gaza, like in the Holy Land, and so yeah, we didn't have fresh mint, but we had frozen shrimp, and we had a big thing of cherry tomatoes that we just needed to use up. So it has, for spice mix, it has ground coriander, cumin, and allspice, and then a bunch of garlic and onion.
See, I think the allspice wasn't enough. Like, I would have added some more other spices. Like, I don't know. The cumin was overpowering. It was way too cuminy. I couldn't really taste anything else but cumin, to be honest.
Interesting. I could dial back the cumin a little bit, and so because we didn't have fresh mint, I used cilantro, and that changed the flavor a bit from the and I didn't have jarred roasted peppers, red pepper, so I cut up a fresh red pepper and I pre-cooked it and kind of charred it a bit to get some of that roasting flavor out of it. So that actually, I think that bit worked. And it was pre-cooked shrimp, so it was more watery, and so it didn't brown in the skillet. That was a little annoying. Pre-cooked shrimp is kind of watery, and so I was a little frustrated with that. And that might have been why the cumin was so strong. It didn't get a chance to get heated up and rendered a little bit.
Oh, so you could have maybe toasted it in the or cooked the sauce down a little bit before you added the shrimp.
Well, I did. Well, so the shrimp gets cooked first and set aside, and then you cook the sauce, and then you add. Although the shrimp only gets about a teaspoon of the mixed spices, so it isn't getting a lot of cumin on it. So maybe it's just there was too much cumin in the sauce. In any case, I could see. I ended up actually adding some lime juice because it needed a little brightening. That wasn't called for in the original. And I think lime and cilantro go together really well, as well as and shrimp. So I liked it.
It was okay. I mean, it wasn't inedible, but it wasn't.
I think everybody
needed something.
I think when I made it the first time, I think everybody liked that version better.
Yeah.
So, and I think that kind did not use pre-cooked shrimp. I don't think we used pre-cooked shrimp that time. I think we used frozen raw shrimp. And
I think using pre-cooked shrimp in like a saucy dish is kind of sometimes dicey.
I think pre-cooked shrimp should be used for something like shrimp cocktail, and that's about it. You know what I mean? Like just not in a hot dish, but just as a appetizer. And I just need some shrimp that's already cooked. I think that would be the case. In any case, that's stuff we've been cooking. So, what have we been reading or watching? So I'm still working on a Star Wars book, which I kind of picked up in the interim of some new books that are coming out. There's Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, has a new book coming out, which is he had another book come out, which was not as successful because it wasn't quite the same thing. This new book is much more in line with what the style that The Martian was, as in near future, very sciencey, engineering, true to life sort of stuff. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm reading this Star Wars novel, which kind of feels young adulty, and I didn't look up like ahead of time, but some of the situations, like the main characters are all like teen and late teen, and some of the situations they get into are like, why are you like making these assumptions? Like, sort of standard tropes of young adult stories where the young person is making an assumption about other people's motivations and blindly refusing to see the reality that the rest of us are all seeing. It's like, anyway, so that's the Star Wars novel I'm watching. So, but I did watch, last time I talked about watching the new Godzilla versus King Kong movie, and I decided to see whether the other Godzilla movies that already came out that I'd seen before, were they just as kind of blah as this movie I felt like was, like just completely lacking in really good plot development. So I watched the 2014 Godzilla movie. This is the one with Bryan Cranston and Elizabeth Olsen, which I didn't realize she was in it. Not the 2019 one with Kyle Chandler and Millie Bobby Brown, and not the 1998 one with Matthew Broderick. Yeah, there have been a lot of Godzilla movies lately. The 2019 one is like the 2014, 2019, and then the one that came out this year are part of a trilogy. The 1998 one is not in continuity with these. it's kind of, I don't know. It's weird. If you're a Godzilla fan, you understand this sort of thing. I'm not really a Godzilla aficionado, so I don't get it. Anyway, Bryan Cranston, I think, was really good in it. The main character was that who played his son. He was really the lead character. Not as great. I don't know. As far as plot goes, I felt like it was a little better. I still get a little annoyed with we're going to end up destroying entire cities. Thousands of people are dying before your eyes as these buildings get knocked down. But at the end, we're all just happy and clapping each other on the back that, yay, Godzilla wins. Yay, Godzilla. Like, Godzilla just stomped on thousands of people in saving you from this other bad monster. Yeah, anyway. But
so maybe it's just the genre isn't a genre for you.
Not anymore. When I was, again, this is me being old guy. When I was younger, this was totally up my alley. But I think I'm getting to the point where this sort of movie just is not my thing anymore, which is sad. As I'm getting older, my tastes are changing. So
I thought your taste maturing was supposed to be a good thing.
No, I want to have immature tastes. I want to enjoy stupid movies. Like when I was in my 20s, I would watch like Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, martial arts, and they were so dumb, but they were so cool.
I don't understand.
Right? See, or Commando, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like those movies were great, and you look back now and you're like, wow, that was really dumb. Stick around, Sully. Like, sorry, you make me laugh. I'll kill you last. Just like stupid lines like that. Anyway. So what have you been reading and watching?
Let's see. On the reading front, I'm kind of like you. I'm sort of killing time. I picked up some books from the library that I thought might be good for reading to or handing to the kids. And so I'm doing some pre-reading of those. The one I'm currently reading is called Bamboo People. And it's set in Burma, and it's a juvenile novel. So it's a young man whose father is in prison. His father's a doctor, and he's been imprisoned by the obviously repressive government. And then the young man is the protagonist is kidnapped and sort of forcibly drafted into the army, and they're fighting against tribal peoples who the government is determined to convince all the soldiers are enemies of the state. And as soon as we wipe them all out, then there will be more education and more this and more that. And the protagonist is kind of dubious about this propaganda, and he just really wants to get out of the army and get back to his mom and take care of his mom and figure out what's happened to his dad. And right before he is kidnapped, he finds out that the neighbor girl who he's always been sweet on might actually return his interest, and her mom might actually be in favor of the match. So wants to get back to her too. And it's kind of violent. I mean, in the way that like books for kids can be violent, where he gets beat up. He watches other kids get beat up. His best friend gets put into solitary confinement. But it's not super graphic in its descriptions of the violence.
Right.
So I would say it's sort of a upper middle school to lower high school. It's not a super sophisticated novel, but it's interesting. I mean, I don't really know much about Burma, and so this is kind of an immersion to a particular bit of Burmese culture.
Interesting that Burma, i.e. Myanmar, is in the news because of a coup and military junta and that sort of thing. So kind of topical anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to read, sometimes I'm better at reading fiction than nonfiction. And so like to sort of discover new places and new things. I often prefer to read historical fiction or, even juvenile fiction, which is often sort of doesn't assume that the reader
knows about a place. So
it's immersive, but it doesn't make assumptions about the reader knowing things, and so it's kind of a little bit more friendly to somebody who doesn't know much.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. And then, so for watching,
Continuing through the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Continuing through my journey through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I watched Avengers Infinity War. And then I watched the first part of Endgame last night, but it got to be too late. And I went to sleep with about an hour of the movie left.
It's a long movie.
It's like 3-hour movie. So
Yeah.
I watched maybe 2/3 of it.
Oh, yeah. That's so, spoilers, of course, if you haven't seen the 2-year-old movie, but, which you haven't, but for Infinity War, how is that going for you from your perspective as you're watching these movies and you're embracing them in their literary quality?
So first of all, I don't know how one could have been alive the past few years and like talking to other human beings who are fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and not have a certain degree of spoilerage happen.
Yeah.
I knew how Infinity War was going to end. I already knew what was going to happen. I was not shocked. And therefore, their dramatic tension was kind of undercut a little bit.
The emotional impact of the ending.
Right. And of course, by the time I got to the end of it, I was kind of tired and sort of half awake. So it didn't hit me as an emotional punch like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I was like, oh, that's how it happened.
Right.
And I'm actually finding I'm much more engaged in Endgame because I have less idea how they get out of the situation where Infinity War dropped them. Although, again, there were some sort of key moments that I had spoiled. And again, it kind of...
Where did you end off? So, like, I don't want to spoil anything by talking about it. Where did you pause the movie? Had the group gotten all together?
Oh, well, yeah, that happens.
Okay, and Professor Hulk and Ant-Man, and have they gotten Fat Hulk? I mean, Fat Thor?
No. I got way past that. Like,
okay,
I got to the point where
Fat Thor is hysterical. Have they traveled?
Yeah, I've got to the point where they've traveled, and
the discussion about time travel between War Machine and Ant-Man and Professor Hulk was Don Cheadle's War Machine was pretty funny. Like
War Machine.
He's the guy. He wears the Iron Man suit. That's like Iron Man, except he's with the military.
Right. I didn't know his name was War Machine.
His comic book name is War Machine.
Okay. That's not as clear in the movies.
I guess not. So yeah, there's a great discussion about time travel in movies and stuff, which I thought was very meta and very well done.
Right. I liked the fact that like everybody's getting their information about how time travel works from movies, and it's just like, why do you assume that the movies get it correct? That was interesting.
I like the fact that the universe is saved by a rat. Were it not for that rat running through Ant-Man's van in storage and bringing him back from the quantum realm, they would half of everybody in the universe would still be dead.
I think I kind of missed the fact that the rat caused him to come back.
Right, the rat turned it on and it caused him to come back.
See, I saw the rat and I think I like blinked or something, and then.
Well, you have to watch the movie more than once probably to catch it. But yes, the fans who have caught the fact that it's the most important rat in existence.
Right. I mean, again, I find I know it's not like high literary quality, but I find it engaging. So one of the things that I read recently, an essay that was in, I want to say, the University of Notre Dame's Church Life Journal, which is actually a great contemporary resource for. It's a mixed bag. Like, I found some like really not readable stuff and some stuff on it that's really very academic in a bad way, in the pejorative sense. But I've also found some really readable, really good articles on it. But I read one that was sort of anti-Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it posited Flannery O'Connor as a like a counterpart
or
a corrective.
right.
It was weird because like, why are you bringing Flannery O'Connor in? She's not writing in the same genre. And it kind of felt like they wanted to dismiss any good coming via the Marvel Cinematic Universe and just say, read Flannery O'Connor instead. And it's a little bit reductive. I mean, they didn't say that the Marvel movies are without any redeeming qualities, but they kind of, at the same time, it was very dismissive of them. And it reminded me of C.S. Lewis's dictum that if you're not a fan of a genre, you probably shouldn't write criticism of that genre, because you're just, if you don't like the genre to begin with, you're not going to see what fans of the genre like, and therefore your criticism just isn't gonna hold water. I kind of felt like the author of this piece should have listened to C.S. Lewis, and if you don't like comic book movies, don't write about comic book movies.
Well, it also posits this idea, like Flannery O'Connor has been elevated in American Catholic literary circles,
as if she were the only American 20th century American Catholic writer out there, which is not true.
Right.
There are many other Catholic writers, and I can understand why Flannery O'Connor is a great writer, but she is not my personal cup of tea. Like, I've read a lot of her short stories. I've read several of her novels. I've studied them in class, so I've read them in a context that gave me some support with them. As an English major, she's an acquired taste and not really very, I mean, she's not bad. She's okay, but she's not my favorite.
So this piece that you mentioned is from last year. In fact, it's from 2020, which is interesting. So it only just came up.
I felt like the author hadn't actually watched very many of the movies, or hadn't watched them carefully. There were some very dismissive comments that I felt like, have you seen Civil War, for example? Like, she kind of tried to say that, or I don't remember.
Right.
Said that like there was a sort of a might makes right message, and I'm thinking, pretty sure that like the whole point of Civil War was
might does not make right.
Captain America and Tony Stark, Iron Man, arguing about whether might makes right, and like it wasn't just an assertion that these guys are right just because they have power. Like, they're fighting about whether or not they have the right to do the things they do, and there's a lot of questions that are raised about the damage that they cause and the fact that they're not being supervised. But what does that mean? But what would it mean if to give the power of various world governments the power to supervise them? Like, would that be better?
So, right. Winter Soldier, Avengers Ultron, Civil War, like all of these movies wrestle with the Black Panther. They wrestle with the question of, where does their right to do the things they do come from? Where is their authority? What is right mean? These movies struggle with these questions. There's no like might makes right. There's what is right? What are we supposed to do?
I think there's a danger too in trying to dismiss a very large body of work in an essay that doesn't really dig into any particular one of them. Like, it doesn't really engage deeply with any one of the movies. It sort of makes broad generalizations about them as a class.
Right.
It acknowledged individual virtues, but it kind of suggested that there was a hollowness or an emptiness or a lack of gravitas or depth. And I kind of felt like it was just saying, well, obviously they don't have these things because of the genre. Again,
the article also cherry picks the defenders. I think it goes through some straw man for the defenders of these superhero movies as good literary qualities or embodying virtues and that sort of thing. I mean, Stratford Caldecott is probably the name that comes up the most when talking about Catholics who have taken superhero genre seriously from a philosophical point of view, from a Catholic philosophical point of view. And nowhere is he mentioned in this. Like, she doesn't deal with that. It's like, why? Oh, and then there was the whole Captain Marvel thing that she got wrong in there too, and just yeah.
I felt like the essay was she really wanted to write about Flannery O'Connor, but she wanted a hook.
And so the hook is
Marvel Cinematic Universe,
the most popular movies that are out there, etc.
But without really, but they're almost brought up in order to be dismissed, not in order to be really engaged with.
Right. If you want to promote Flannery O'Connor, do it, but you don't need to do it by running down something that everyone is, that is popular with a lot of people. It just was weird. Anyway.
But again, I actually like reading sort of contrarian pieces, because I think that when I look at somebody who I disagree with, it pushes me a little bit harder to think about what I do like about things. It makes me notice details and themes and questions more thoroughly. So,
okay. So let's move on and talk about. So it's Good Shepherd Sunday as we are sitting here now, and any insights on the. So one of the things that gets me about the readings for today, well, two. So the psalm isn't always. It's funny. The psalm isn't always like grab you. It's sometimes it's the thing that doesn't really fit into the rest of the readings. But
today during Mass, when we got to the psalm, Lucy leaned over and she said, "Ooh, it really fits."
Exactly.
She was very excited. She didn't whisper very quietly either. She's 8.
Yes, the stone rejected by the builders has become the cornerstone, and
it's mentioned in our first reading from St. Peter.
Right, he is the stone rejected by you, the builders, which has become the cornerstone. And we were talking.
And Peter is quoting from the psalm, and then we sing the psalm right afterwards, which is nice.
And he's making that connection to Jesus, the explicit for his audience. And we were talking before we started, like this question of that you've posed before, which is to the original Jewish audience of the psalm, hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus, what did it mean to them? The stone rejected by the builders.
Because every commentary I've ever heard starts with.
Well, obviously, Jesus is
the stone rejected by the builders.
Right.
That's what Peter says, and that's where commentators start. But when I was taught to read the Bible, I was taught first you look at the literal meaning. And to the Jews who sang these psalms for hundreds of years before Jesus came, this verse had a meaning. The stone rejected by the builders has become the cornerstone. This is a marvel in our eyes. By the Lord has this been done. It is wonderful in our eyes. What did that mean? Is that referring to, like, there was an actual stone which was famous, like maybe from the building of the temple? Is this a proverb or a parable? Is this an idiom in Hebrew?
Was there a story that was told to children about a stone that was rejected, but what became the cornerstone, the ugly duckling? It's essentially like kind of like an ugly duckling story in that sense.
Right. It feels like there's a reference which has been lost or obscured, and I wanted to know what it was. So I went some years ago, I think it was like 2017, I went hunting and I actually found a rabbinic parable used to explain Psalm 118. So this is the parable. When Solomon's temple was being built, it was forbidden for the sound of hammers to be heard at the job site because it was a holy place of worship. You couldn't have worship with construction going on in the background, so it had to be quiet. What this meant for the construction was that each and every 20-ton stone had to have a shop drawing and was made several miles away in the quarry. Several miles away, each stone was carefully cut for its exact spot in the temple. From the very start, there was a plan for each stone. The very first stone to be delivered was the capstone, but that's the last stone needed in construction. So the builder said, "What's this? This doesn't look like any of the first stones we need. Put it over there for now." Well, years went by and the grass grew over the capstone and everyone generally forgot about it. Finally, the construction was done and the builders said, "Send us the capstone." And word came back from the quarry, "We already did." They were confused. Then someone remembered what they'd done with the very first stone sent to them. It was taken from its lowly position among the overgrown weeds where it had been forgotten, and it was honored in the final ceremony to complete the temple. Thus the scripture says, "The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone."
but capstone as opposed to cornerstone, which is interesting.
So then the question is there a translation issue here, or is Peter deliberately changing the word from the Psalm?
Well, but the Psalm says cornerstone.
But I'm wondering, is that
what did the Hebrew say, or the Greek?
Does the Hebrew original specify cap or cornerstone, or is it ambiguous?
Or in Hebrew, is there a difference?
Right.
Maybe it just means important stone, keystone, that sort of thing. I wonder. If I wasn't recording right now, I would open up Logos and do a search. In fact, I'm probably going to do that after we're done, so I can check on that.
I like digging into like these little questions that I have. The fun thing is that this is one of my most frequently commented on blog posts. Not like there's a volume of comments, but that over the years since I posted it, I regularly get commenters, and almost all of the commenters on the blog post say, well, Jesus is the cornerstone. That's what St. Peter says.
Right. Not getting the question.
Yeah, that's not the question I have. Like, I know that. That's sort of the given.
Right. Read the blog post.
Anyway.
So we saw a stone from the temple in person.
We did years ago.
At the Museum of Science.
At the Museum of Science.
In Boston.
They had an exhibit of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes.
But they also had, along with it, a lot of other archaeological bits and pieces from the Holy Land.
Because they also had the IMAX show on Jerusalem at the same time.
It was a very well put together show, because it had the IMAX movie Jerusalem, which follows 3 young women through sort of a
Muslim, Jewish, and Christian girls
who all look very similar.
I think on purpose.
Right. Sort of exploring what Jerusalem means to peoples of different faiths, and how parallel their lives and their worship and their families and friends and meals are.
Oh, we're not all that very different.
Right. Anyway, they also had so they had the actual Dead Sea Scrolls, and they had a lot of artifacts, bottles and the things that archaeologists dig up. But among other things, they had a big stone.
One of the stones from the temple.
It was really big.
It was really massive. They also had some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, some of the fragments, which was fascinating, because I've been fascinated by the Dead Sea Scrolls for years. So that was really neat to see. So anyway, that's presumably not the stone that the builders rejected,
right,
and was sent to Boston. So I wanted to mention the gospel for this week, just before we finish up, because I really love the imagery of this, because Jesus tells the story of the good shepherd. So a good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. A hired hand, who's not the shepherd, who doesn't own the sheep, when he sees a wolf coming, he says, I'm not dying for some paycheck. I'm out of here. You sheep are on your own. And I love this imagery of the guy who has no skin in the game. He has no skin off his nose. He'll go get another job. This is not worth it to fight a wolf to protect these sheep. These sheep are dumb and they're hard to defend. Frankly, you must have seen, if you're on Facebook at all, you must have seen the video of the kid rescuing a sheep from it looks like someone is digging up a dish for a pipe. So it's been excavated, and a sheep has got caught in it, is stuck in it, and the kid has to pull the sheep out of the thing. And so as soon as he pulls the sheep out, it bounds away happy. Oh, I'm free, yay! And it leaps and boom, right back into the hole.
Like a few yards further down.
It's just immediately back into the hole. And it's such a metaphor for how dumb sheep are. Which is also how dumb we are, because we're sheep and we're constantly falling back in the hole of sin and need to be rescued by Jesus. And for a hired hand doesn't these sheep are a pain in the neck. Whereas for a shepherd, he knows his sheep, they know him, they follow his command, they listen to him. And Father Walter Carrero was the priest celebrating Mass on Catholic TV this morning that Ben and I were watching, and he was talking about going to the Holy Land and how the guide pulled a bus over and went and called the shepherd girl that he knew, that she saw her on the side, from the side of the road, and she came over, and the sheep all just bounded after her, because her family owns those sheep. They are her sheep. They know there's a story of how shepherds on the hills would intermingle their flocks. And when it was time to go, the shepherd would start walking away and he would just call. He had a particular call, and his sheep would separate out from the other flocks, the other sheep from the other flocks, and follow him. There was a relationship between them. And for the shepherd, those sheep are their food, their shelter, because you've got to pay, you sell either the wool or the meat or whatever to make money to keep your home up.
Or else you just spin the wool into clothes that you wear.
Or clothes, or, right. Those sheep are life for you and your family. And so you've got literally skin in the game for that, whereas the hired hand doesn't. So I really kind of like the imagery there. And so Jesus, he's got skin in the game for us. There is a relationship between us and Jesus. He's not just some hired hand who's been sent to kind of, begrudgingly, I've been given a job by God to come and, to do this thing. But when times is tough, I'm out of here. Like, you're on your own. No, that's not the way it is. And I think in a way it should be the same way with good priests and good bishops. I'll be honest. I've met priests and seen bishops who it seems like it's a job to them, and they're only in the game so long as it isn't too hard. It's hard. I know that sounds judgmental, and maybe that is, but I've met guys who I didn't feel like they had skin in the game. Just to be honest.
To speak of skin in the game, though, that actually reminds me of Mother Sophia's commentary on last week's gospel,
right,
where Jesus appears to the disciples in the upper room, and he says, "Peace be with you." And she points out that Jesus speaking the words happens after his resurrection, and in the context of him showing them his wounds,
the violence he has suffered for their sake.
And the question she asks is, what do wounds have to do with peace? Because they don't really seem on the surface to. And yet Jesus is the one who suffers wounds so that we can have peace. Not that he experienced peace, but that he brings peace. And she actually makes some really interesting points about like how the peace of Christ that we wish to each other, that we bring to each other, doesn't necessarily come from our feeling at peace. Like, we don't always necessarily feel peaceful when we wish each other peace, like during the context of Mass. And she talked about how the rule of St. Benedict has a very strict rule that you're not supposed to like celebrate Mass or eat a meal before like you've made peace with your brother. You're not supposed to let the sun set on
your anger,
your lack of peace. Well, on your lack of peace,
right?
But she also talks about how like too strictly enforcing that. Like there was one abbot she talked about who wouldn't actually let the monks come to Mass or come to dinner until they'd settled their grievances. And she says there's a little bit that can lead to problems of people not really settling, like they're sort of going through the motions, but they're not actually making peace.
You mean like when you have two kids who have been squabbling and you like say you're sorry? I'm sorry.
Exactly. And the Benedictine rule of life is one of the things I really love about it is that Benedict assumes that the monks in a monastery are like a family and the abbot is like a father, and that these things do actually have that sort of dynamic to them, which is why I think the Benedictine rule works really well for families to contemplate as well as for religious. But so she kind of talks about like not letting the sun set on your friendship. Don't let the sun, the light go out of your friendship. But it might take time to find that peace, to work through things and to come to those resolutions. They don't automatically come just because we say, I'm sorry, peace be with you. I think that's good to contemplate for us as well, especially in the family context. But that peace comes from Christ, because from him giving it to us so that we can give it to others. And it's a peace that comes from a woundedness. Like when we make peace, we're not denying our wounds.
Right. Peace comes at a cost. Peace, like a peace that was it Bonhoeffer? Cheap. You don't want cheap grace. The grace comes, ironically, it comes at a cost of self, a cost of what I have to give, of sacrifice, self-sacrifice, the sacrifice of Christ. And so when we want peace, we have to wound ourselves in a sense, wound our pride, wound our, the healing comes through wounding ourselves, because you rending your heart. That the saying of like rend your heart, not your clothes. We have to rend our heart, open our heart to one another, to break down the walls. And I mean, peace comes through a kind of violence. I mean, the peace of Christ and the resurrection comes through the violence of the cross. Without the cross, without the wounds and death of Christ, there is no resurrection. And there is no salvation. Our salvation comes first from the cross. Like we can't skip Good Friday. You can't go from Holy Thursday to Easter Sunday. And Lord, Jesus even double check with the Father. If it's possible to do this without doing tomorrow, if we could just skip right to Sunday, I'm all for that. Nope, we got to go through Good Friday to get there. So peace has a cost. I like the saying, by the way, in the Rule of Benedict of do not give a hollow greeting of peace.
Right, because we can. I mean,
it's very easy to say, to go through the motions.
Right. And especially if you're going to Mass every day and you're giving a sign of peace to your fellow monks every day, it would be very easy to go through the motions without actually making peace.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The hard work is making the peace.
Humility and do violence to the prideful self, I think is one way to look at that. All right. I think that should do it for us for now. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons and make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Tobalin T, Daniel B, Joe K, Paul E, and Christopher K. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of our discussion? If you have any feedback for us, let us know by commenting at sqpn.com/bets, that's BETTS, or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to bets@sqpn.com. Relevant links from our discussion, including links to the book that Melanie mentioned, will be in our show notes on sqpn.com. Follow Raising the Bets on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you should follow the SQPN YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notifications. You can also find us on Spotify, too, as well. Everywhere you can get a podcast, that's where you'll find us. Until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.